On the evening of May 19, 1903, in the oak-paneled game room of the exclusive University Club in San Francisco, a group of well-to-do men were sharing drinks and conversation. The talk centered on President Theodore Roosevelt's political fortunes and the chances that the Boston Pilgrims might take the pennant in the brand new American League. Then the discussion turned to another topic, the future of a new machine that only recently had been showing up on the streets of major American cities, the horseless carriage. A debate broke out, and one man, a stranger to the club, soon found himself completely outnumbered.
The majority opinion was that, save for short distances, the automobile was an unreliable novelty, a passing mechanical fancy, which thinking men could do no other than discard. The horse, they said, continued to demonstrate his proper place as the dependable servant of mankind for travel. Horatio Nelson Jackson.
Horatio Nelson Jackson was a 31-year-old doctor from Burlington, Vermont. 3 years earlier, after a mild case of tuberculosis, Jackson had given up his medical practice. But he was still energetic, optimistic, and brimming with new ideas. That evening, Jackson argued that the automobile was more than a rich man's toy, suitable only for short drives on city boulevards. And he disagreed when most of the other men declared that one would never be driven across the continent.
And he heard some people in the next table talking about the horseless carriage and how it was not going to last. It wasn't like the horse, and he couldn't stand it. And he, I guess, got up from the table, went over and started talking to them about it, and eventually, within a few short minutes, he took out his wallet, put $50 on the table and said, I bet I can drive across the country.
And there was no turning back after that.
Under the terms of the bet, Jackson would win the $50 if he made it all the way to New York City, something no one else had ever done before, in less than 3 months. Only 4 days later, Horatio Nelson Jackson would set off from San Francisco on the greatest adventure of his life, an adventure that would mark the beginning of a new era in America and the end of another. On the afternoon of May 23, 1903, they were ready to go. The two men started down San Francisco's Market Street to cross the bay on the Oakland Ferry for their long journey east. It was the beginning of America's first road trip, a trip that would collect 1,000 impressions of a country and a people on the cusp of extraordinary change.
My darling Swipes, the hardest work I ever did was to say goodbye to you. I came pretty nearly having cold feet. There isn't one woman in 1,000 that would let a fellow do what I have done, and I can tell you, old girl, I appreciate it. Please give my best love to your mother, and tell my father and mother that I love them as much as ever. I shall write you when I can, and shall depend on you to keep them posted. Yours till New York, Nelson. P.S. Take good care of yourself, and don't worry.
There is no thing that we can do that is more American than getting in a car and striking out across country. I think as a nation we can think of few things that draw us more strongly than a piece of roadway heading to we know not where. This is the way that we grow up. This is the way that we enter our history. Get in a car and find the country.
talk about cars having a timeless quality, I think the 300 SL defines that idea. The darn thing looks as modern today as when it was built, if not more so. I mean, you can see a company producing a car exactly like that today.
It's an extremely masculine vehicle. It presents itself as a competitive piece of equipment, something that you know by just looking at it was built to be competing in the world of auto racing.
Makes people, I think, of a bird flying, because it is a wing, and it's shaped like a wing, and almost like a seagull wing. Perhaps that's how it's got its name.
It was so striking. We all thought about it a lot. Wish we'd bought one.
This is a car built by Mercedes-Benz, a company that was riding high before World War II. It was basically bombed to dust in World War II and slowly rebuilt. By 1950, 6 years after the end of the war, they were in a position to build a sports car again. A sports car is really a luxury. That's not the first thing you build when you're coming out of the rubble. The 300 SL was that car. They poured their heart and soul into it, and it was radical in that it had a tubular space frame, it had the special doors, and it said, in a word, we're back.
As I learned more about the Mercedes-Benz Marquis, the engineering behind their cars, especially the pre-World War race cars and then the cars from the 50s that when I was young, it became very clear to me that these were probably the best engineered cars of the 50s. This was the supercar of the 50s.
If you think about most cars, however spectacular they are when they first come out, there is a time when they become dated. A few escape that, and that's a handful, and the Mercedes is one of those.
Arriving in Europe, he is struck by the somber and majestic presence of an ancient cathedral a short distance from where the finest drivers in the world will challenge one another in the Grand Prix competition. He feels satisfied. It's the right setting for a very special motion picture. As the day of the 1970 Le Mans race approaches, his production company actually prepares their own camera car to run in the race. The car, a Porsche 908 Spider, is examined very carefully by the scrutineers, for it has 3 movie cameras mounted on it, and yet is expected to go as fast as the other cars in its class. It gets off to a quick start and stays in position very well. Out of the 55 cars starting the race, only 15 finish. The camera car finishes second in its class and 8th overall, a good finishing position for any car, let alone one with 3 cameras on it. This unique venture yields footage that could not be obtained any other way. For instance, there are certain corners where over 250,000 people are watching. And the only way you can ever capture the impact and excitement of the real thing is by having cameras in the race.
I realized that that car has been like a piece of furniture in his life for almost 50 years now. He drove it way back, and he's driven it from time to time since then, and now he finds it and the Bonneville salt flats. It's as if he took his sofa out of his living room and put it on the Bonneville salt flats. And it must be amazing for him to say, "Hello, old sofa, old 300 SL, what are you doing out here? And what am I doing out here?" John Fitch is a very independent man. He's lived his life exactly as he wants to, almost the whole way. And I think that shows a little bit in this adventure toward the end of his life out at Bonneville. He's breaking the rules out there by being so old and prepared to drive as fast as he is. And this is typical for him. He kind of looks at things like he's the guy that's going to make the rules, not somebody else.